Welcome to the July edition of the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. I'm Amanda Rogers, your host, and we've got a summer-themed July episode just for you. We're covering the whole gamut of films on offer at local cinemas and hopefully beyond. Starting with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Then Shabu, an indie Dutch documentary with a whole lot of charm. Finally, we're reviewing Asteroid City, Wes Anderson's latest ode to 50s Americana and his own version of The Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And then we're unpacking the program of the Edinburgh International Film Festival, which has recently been announced, talking to the program team of EHFM 2023. Stay tuned. So it's July and I'm here with Simon Bowie. Simon, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. Thinking lots about summer films right now. It's a really blockbuster season at the moment. And we're going to be covering some of those blockbuster films. And we're hitting like, this will be airing the week before the really big double bill, if you will, or everyone's talking about the Oppenheimer Barbie sort of. Do you have your double bill ready to go? Or are you picking which one are you picking?
Unfortunately, I'm away this weekend, so I can't do the full Barbenheimer experience that everyone's talking about. And I think Oppenheimer is like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So combined with Barbie, that's like a 6 hour, that's almost a full work day. Sitting down and watching these films back to back. I think I'm probably going to see Barbie first. Yeah. I might see that on Friday before I go away, actually.
Well, I mean, I'm a Greta Gerwig fan, but I like the trailer for Oppenheimer and not as much the trailer for, but I'm still excited to see it. So I'm certainly will see Barbie probably first.
Yeah, I think I'm more excited for Oppenheimer in general. Although I was disappointed with Nolan's last film, Tenet. But I'm looking forward to Oppenheimer. It's just a bigger time commitment, than Barbie.
True. And as we'll be talking about, we have had quite a lot of film time commitments over the last week watching films.
Yes, quite.
So we'll be talking about that. But also in the news of film right now in Edinburgh, the Edinburgh International Film Festival program has been launched about a week and a half ago. It's through the Edinburgh International Festival this year. So if anyone's been paying attention to what's happened over the last year, the Center for the Moving Image, the organization that housed the Film House and the Edinburgh International Film Festival, went into administration. But luckily, the Edinburgh International Film Festival has been saved, and it's currently sort of been saved with the help of the Edinburgh International Festival. And we will be talking to the program director, Kate Taylor, and one of the programmers, Rafa Sales Ross, later on in the program. But a few really good films, and we'll probably be talking about it more next month. But I'm excited to see and highly recommend people to check out Jenny Finley's Your Fat Friend, which stars Aubrey Gordon.
I'm looking forward to that.
That film won the audience award. Well, I think it world premiered at Tribeca, but it won the audience award at Sheffield Film Festival. So we reviewed it last month. So you can check out that review. But if you're in the area, we definitely highly recommend going to see that. And also, is there anybody out there as well? Amaya highly recommended that from Sheffield as well. I think it premiered at Sundance. So those are a few. I mean, there's quite a lot of documentaries that look really good. We'll be talking to, again, the programmers later on. Simon, any films that you are looking forward to seeing, or did you notice that you would maybe want to see?
Yeah, I've heard great things about Passages, directed by Iris Sachs. It's got Ben Whishaw and Franz Rogowski, who I've always loved in films I've seen him in. So I've heard great things about that from film festivals. So looking forward to seeing that. Chuck Chuck Baby is meant to be quite good as well. Two women fall in love amid a chicken packaging factory.
Great. And it's smaller this year. So it's, I think, over six days, I believe. But yeah, it's fully packed with some really good international, Scottish, UK films, short films as well from Bridging the Gap and Scottish short films. And there will be an outdoor film festival actually as well. Also a big shout out to my friend and mentor Susan Kemp, whose film is a work in progress called The Linda Miles Project, a manifesto, is being screened on the 19th of August as well.
Ooh.
So it's and they're going to have a conversation around Linda Miles. Linda Miles will be there. So that was one of the film house sort of film festival in the 70s, sort of 80s programmers, incredible person in film in Edinburgh. And Mark Cousins and Susan and the archive activist group Invisible Women, they'll all be sort of doing a big day around that work in progress film, but also around Linda's work. So that sounds really exciting as well. So you can check out their I think you can check out their film festival program and let us know what you think. But yeah, we'll be talking a lot more about that later on in the program with the programming director and programmer. But apart from that, it seems as though there's other industry news going on, and massive strikes happening with Writers Guild and also SAG just joining in. And I think another theme that we'll hear in the rest of, apart from summer and summer films, is AI and the scariness of AI. I think it fits a bit with this story as well. So Simon, have you been following the what's happening?
Yeah, I've been following the kind of industry news from America around the strikes and some discussion of it on social media. Full solidarity to the workers of the WGA and the SAG-AFTRA, as far as I'm concerned. It just seems like I don't see how the studios, the AMPTP, can hold their position and not negotiate in good faith with what seem like very reasonable demands to me from the writers and actors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also, like I said, I think the AI thing is a bit weird, that the new deal would be any background actors, their likeness could be like bought for one day of work and in perpetuity be used. I mean, this kind of stuff is...
I can't believe that's a serious offer that you would put to a union. There's no way someone's going to say, yeah, I'll trade away a year's worth of work for one day of work. It's an insulting thing to ask of a professional actor.
Yeah. And I mean, quite a lot. I've been listening and hearing people like on the picket lines. It's so unfortunate because so many people who, that's their livelihood, and it's now just had to stop. And the comments that are being made, and I don't know if that's in order to sort of like push, the two groups together, but it's just that they're going to keep this going, and until it really affects people. And it's just, it's really, really sad. And of course it shuts down everything, so it shuts down all production in the US.
I think they were going to try and muddle through without writers, but without actors, it's shuts down the whole Hollywood machine, really. The only group who accepted their deal from the AMPTP was the Directors Guild of America, and I think a fair few of the directors are actually regretting taking that deal at the moment.
Yeah, I think they had given something like a meeting, but there are certain things that, like we said, whether or not it's just this AI, but it's also about it's about the changes. And again, I don't know that much about it, but it's also about the changes of how things are watched in terms of like streaming and, how much money you get.
How streaming services report how many people have watched a certain program or a film, and how they pay the actors based on that. I think is a major part of the strike.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just an absolute shame. And I agree with you. Complete solidarity for WGA and SAG-AFTRA for in support of them. And I hope it gets resolved soon.
Our lives are the sum of our choices. And we cannot escape the past. Ethan, this mission of yours is gonna cost you dearly.
The world is changing. Truth is vanishing. War is coming.
It's been a long time, friend. You've no idea the power I represent. It knows your story and how it ends.
Listen to me. The world's coming after you.
His fate is written. Shall we write yours, too?
If anything happens to them, there's no place that I won't go to kill you. That is written.
Speaking of summer blockbuster films, there's been the big ones that coming back. I didn't end up seeing Indiana Jones, but I hear mixed reviews and box office issues, if you will. But there is a film you might have heard called Mission Impossible the 7th, right? And part 1, a good old playing every half hour at my local multiplex and all over the city. You can see it in IMAX and 2D and 3D, and like I almost saw it in ScreenX accidentally, and I was thank goodness I didn't, because I don't know if I would have been able to like handle it. There was enough action going on to keep me like very tense in a good way. Yeah. But you had 3 more screens around me. I don't know.
It's the same at my local. I think they're showing it every hour, every half hour, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think they're just wiping the slate clean this weekend for Barbenheimer, where they're showing Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Okay, so if you're listening, you have to get your 3 hour.
You gotta go now, yeah.
Go right now. So Simon, my guess is that you have a little bit more knowledge about Mission Impossible than I do. I do remember, I remember a few train scenes, the original ones, but I'm not really caught up with the Mission Impossible world. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this film?
Sure. I'm not as caught up on the Mission Impossible films as I could be either, though I have gone back and watched a couple this weekend.
All right.
But yeah, the film follows Ethan Hunt of the IMF, the Impossible Mission Force, who is given another exciting mission involving, spies and espionage and action scenes. In this one, speaking of AI, there is a rogue AI threatening the nation states of the West, primarily the United States of America. This rogue AI can tap into all kinds of digital information. It can change digital information, so you don't know what's true and what's not. And it can hack into your systems, hijack your systems, and so no digital information can be trusted. Like if you've only talked to someone over email, they say you have to be careful because it could be the AI hacking into your systems. And it's kind of getting tendrils out and getting human operatives to do its work in the physical world. So Ethan Hunt gets his team together to get 2 halves of a key that will then help them access the AI or shut down the AI or whatever. And that's the loose plot of the film, which is really a very loose plot to tie together some various action set pieces where, we hear about Tom Cruise doing his own stunts, where Tom Cruise has risked his life to jump a motorcycle off a cliff onto a moving train or whatever. So yeah, it's really a loose script tying together these big action set pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember enjoying the Mission Impossibles that I have seen years ago. I think there was like one like knife, like that moment where like there's like like a big knife or something, right? It stops right before, like
Mhm.
on the top of a train or something like that. And this kind of stuff is fun sometimes. And I think in particularly a few scenes in this long film, they were quite gripping, So I think like whether the budget was just incredible or, yeah, I think they were fun, they were like fun, good, like sort of how I thought like Jurassic Park was a little bit.
Mhm.
Sometimes not always like completely, obviously not believable, if you will. And so I kind of gave, I didn't think the script was great at all, but I think that there's a little bit of the hokiness that I just sort of feel like that was always been part of these films, like there's a little bit
Yeah.
like Simon Pegg kind of being this like jokester character, like, as Tom Cruise is going to jump off, a big massive cliff, and some of the bigger, and so there were some gripping scenes of stuff that I would expect. I mean, I wasn't expecting much. I think it was a bit long.
I think, yeah, it's way too long. I think the script is not good. I'll agree with you on that. It's just way too baggy. There's way too many scenes that reiterate stuff we've already heard or stuff that we could reasonably have figured out. And I think there's probably one action scene too many. It feels awfully long. It just feels like they've padded it out so that they could split it into these two movies to make this a big event. Like, we know Tom Cruise is very concerned about cinema and cinemas after the pandemic. He was recorded during filming lambasting the crew for some breach of COVID protocol, and really getting quite irate at them because he believes in cinema so much. But it does feel too long. It feels like they've made it too much of an event and built it up too much. I agree that the script is really bad as well. Like, I wanted it to be funnier. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned Simon Pegg and the comedy aspect of it. I feel it could be a lot lighter for a film that's about, rubber masks, hiding people, and a rogue AI god gone rampaging. You can have more fun with that than the film actually does. There's a few funny moments, like the scene on the cliff that you mentioned, where Simon Pegg's encouraging him to jump off, but overall there's a kind of dourness and a seriousness that just I go to these films for fun. Like, I want to have more fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does feel like it's got this. There's a Mission Impossible feeling, like the way that there's a Bond, and so I'm sort of expecting something out of it that I got, but it didn't bring anything new. And also, yeah, if and we'll be talking about another film that said intermission, like in one point it says intermission like possible, and I could have really
Yeah.
used this like intermission in this film, let alone now there's another one. So I'm not sure if we'll be doing part 2 as part of Cinetopia next time. And did they film it all? They didn't film it. Did they film it all together? I didn't know that's when Tom Cruise kind of lost his cool on everybody, was during this filming, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they started filming it just before COVID, and then obviously it had to be interrupted
Yeah.
during the early months of the pandemic. But this was one of the first films to go back into production. So I think Tom Cruise is a producer on the film. He's got massive creative control over this franchise. So I think he, in particular, felt a lot of pressure to model what Hollywood production under lockdown could look like. So, like I say, there was this incident where he was caught on camera yelling at the crew, which is
Yeah.
not acceptable no matter how big a production you have. But yeah, they filmed it during lockdown in the UK and Venice, which is very noticeable in the Venice scenes, because Venice
Absolutely,
is
yeah.
absolutely empty in the
Right.
film. Like, it is a ghost town in St. Mark's Square, which doesn't ring true at all, because if you've
Yeah.
ever been to St. Mark's Square, it is full of tourists at all times. So it just makes the film feel rather empty. Which I think the whole film does, really. It doesn't feel like there's a credible threat. It feels like there's a few people, a few of our characters running around and chasing one another, but it doesn't feel like they're actually in a world where the AI enemy could hurt them or do anything significant. It all feels a little hollow.
Yeah. I also learned, and this is probably something that lots of people know, but that Tom Cruise does his own stunts as well. So he, so he did also, and so the big stunts that he did at the beginning was supposedly they're all done by him, which also adds to this Tom Cruise phenomena here. Of I'll leave my opinions of Tom Cruise to another film in another day.
I think the best thing about the film is the practical action set pieces.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's all done practically, like they've actually blown up a train or whatever. That looks great, and they are filmed in a really good way. That scene where this kind of scene that they've been promoting where Tom Cruise jumps off a cliff on a motorbike, and you can tell that it's Tom Cruise from the moment the motorbike starts to when he goes off the cliff.
Yeah.
Looks terrific, and it's an amazing stunt. I heard that to film that, they just wanted to get one take where it looks good and he jumps off the cliff and you can tell he's on the motorbike. But he wasn't happy with how it turned out, so they ended up filming that 6 times. He's jumping off this cliff 6 times. They all look great. It's just not tied together by scripting and editing that works particularly well. I think it's a lazy script, and the editing is just bad, which is wild considering how long this film had in post-production.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that we don't need films to be that long unless, in these kinds of films, like I think Bond was ridiculously long, the last one. And, I don't think that many people on our team really liked it. That one didn't seem to drag, but it just depend as much for me as this one. But I think that was the first film I saw, back in the cinema after the pandemic, or after like the second sort of lockdown. So maybe I was just excited to be in the cinema again. But this was really, really, I mean, I must have taken 3 breaks in the middle of it, which is what I do, but like, it's just intermission, please. And, but yeah, I mean, like you said, the practical set pieces, I think it brings me back to this kind of 90s sort of Hollywood sort of thing that I remember going to cinemas for. So I appreciate it for a summer flick that wasn't too hard. The popcorn goes well with it, if you will. You know what I mean? The popcorn and the soda.
I think that's it. It's designed to be a summer blockbuster. It just doesn't feel as good as I remember previous Mission Impossibles feeling.
Yeah. And that means you check it out now. Might be in it's every half hour right now. Might be in a few screens here and there, but come up this weekend. We'll be on to some others as well. Speaking of AI, I was going to mention, because I had gotten an email to mention this, there's going to be the University of Edinburgh is putting on a AI on Film Festival. They're going to actually be showing all these films, programmed films over the years that involve the story or that use AI. Obviously, you can imagine 2001: A Space Odyssey is in there. Things like WALL-E and Metropolis and you name it, Little Joe, and obviously AI, artificial intelligence. So it's really been a theme running across I mean, it's a big thing for the University of Edinburgh as well, of course, but it's been a big theme of the films and
there's a lot of it about these days. It was a huge theme at the Glasgow Short Film Festival this year. There were a lot of short films that were made with AI tools, or made in some cases almost entirely by AI tools, to kind of mixed effects. I wrote an essay on it for takeonecinema.net if anyone wants to check that out. But
you did?
Yeah, it's I didn't always find, I tended to find the more AI is used in making a film, the less effective I found it.
Yeah.
But there were some interesting films, short films, as part of that festival that are worth checking out.
Well, just like Mission Impossible Part 1 and probably Part 2, yeah, AI can be your friend or might be your enemy. So
Yes.
we will we'll continue we'll continue watching it on screen or dealing with it in some capacity.
I'm gonna be famous! Oh, we gaan in privévliegtuig. Zelfde outfit, alles. Hey man!
All right, so the next film we are reviewing is a Dutch film called Shabu, and it's currently out. It's currently out in cinemas. It will be one final screening in Edinburgh on Thursday, and it's a documentary that came out, I think, premiered at Berlinale. It's also being distributed by a small but really exciting new distribution company, a Tape Collective, which also does a lot of great archive work as well. And the film is directed by Shamira Rafella, and it's about a 14-year-old by the name of Shabu who lives in the Paperclip housing project in Rotterdam. And basically, the story is about his summer, and he accidentally ruined his grandmother's car. It's sort of a Dutch Caribbean family, and the grandmother's kind of in charge of, kind of ahead of the family, but away, and and the whole family is pretty upset with him for making this as he's 14 years old. He has to sort of spend the rest of the summer kind of in punishment and working to try to pay his grandmother back. But really the film is his life. It's about his life. It's about hanging out with his girlfriend, kind of his love relationship issues, selling popsicles. It's fun. It's about, he wants to be a musician, and I think this character. I'll see what Simon thinks about it, but I think this character was really captivating, and it does the story is. I think I read something that says that sometimes nonfiction films, are about a particular time and place, and what I think this does well for me is that it really captures a time and a place and a character in a way, and what goes around that, and the sound and the music and the video, and the colors, are part of that experience. So
Yeah, it's a very charming film, and it gets by on the charm of Shabu himself. He's a very charming kid. At one point, he's a 14-year-old, but at one point in the film, he says, "People think I'm older than I am,"
yeah,
and you get that sense of maturity mixed with immaturity in him. He's a thoughtful kid, but he sometimes does things that he doesn't understand why he does, which we can all relate to, I think, as teenagers. So he's kind of positioned as the spirit, the heart of this social housing complex, the Paperclip, in Rotterdam, and it's about community and people and just finding joy in those kinds of long, aimless summers that you had when you were a kid. It's really beautiful. It's a really charming film. I couldn't believe it was a documentary
yeah,
because it's filmed in such a filmic way, and it's got such a strong kind of narrative through line that it doesn't feel real, and yet it's so exciting, so charming that it is real, and that Shabu actually exists out there in the world, is a great thing to take from it. It's a joyful, optimistic thing, I think.
yeah. I mean, I think because because Shabu is real and so sincere. That's the nonfiction part that comes out in this
Yeah.
film that works so well. And I think as you just said, he's very self-aware.
Yeah.
And there's a certain segment where he, as you said, he says, I'm, some people think I'm older, but I am only 14. And I think it's like coming to that coming of age sort of period in your life where you're sort of going back and forth between what what you hope to do, what you want to do, this new impression, the new identity that you're putting on yourself
Yeah.
and the connections you have with your friends, your like your new girlfriend, if you will, your family. And there's one really sweet moment, and I won't give it away, but it was so sincere, and it was just it was this time of your life, like childhood and coming of age that this film captures. You brought up about how beautiful it is, and I agree. I think sometimes I thought it was a little bit like when he's in a supermarket, there's all these colors, like the shirts that he's wearing, and I think maybe when you're talking about nonfiction, I do feel like this might blur the line, and the same way that we sort of discussed El Castillo, the castle, and quite a lot of films over the years that kind of blur the line between nonfiction and fiction, or how much is how much is set up, but it still doesn't take away from the the sincerity of the story, and whether or not some scenes are sort of put in or the person's put in place or whatnot, to sort of create that scene. And I think that maybe works really well here, because shots are framed so beautifully. The colors of the paperclip housing project are unique in of itself, and sort of as we reviewed Gagarine, which was a similar sort of
I thought
film.
of Gagarine, yeah.
The actual architecture is really interesting, so it lends itself for very interesting sort of shots. But then you have the mise en scène, like the colors of summer, like floats and popsicles and stuff like that just made it so bright and so pretty. And I really, really loved the visual sort of element of it, Exactly.
I think the whole aesthetic looks great, and it's clearly based around, like you say, the paperclip in Rotterdam, this big, beautiful social housing complex that, like Gagarin, reminded me of these huge projects that just don't get built anymore.
Yeah.
These huge, aesthetically appealing places for kind of mass population that simply don't get built anymore. But as well as the kind of visuals and stuff, the sound design and the music of the film is such a critical part of it. It's got this dreamy quality, like we're in Shabu's head, like we're seeing through Shabu's eyes. Occasionally he hears like there is voiceover of almost memory that he's dwelling on, like his mum being mad at him, his grandma being mad at him, that he's kind of dwelling on, which you kind of do when you're a teenager. But it's also got this kind of sense of rhythmic blackness. So you hear in the scene in the supermarket that you mentioned, we hear the drums in his head as he's beating these crisp packets and cans of pop or whatever. And it's producing these sounds, but in his head it is transformed into percussion, it is transformed into drums, it's transformed into music, because music is such a central part of his life and how he relates to the world and how he relates to his family, his blackness, his community. That all comes together at the end. I don't want to spoil it, but it all comes together at the end in a really beautiful and moving scene, sort of culminating all those themes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the sound, because that really did affect me a lot, in the same way that I mentioned with Gagarine, where it feels like you're kind of in, you're in the world of the character as much as you are in a documentary or whatnot. And in that case, it wasn't a documentary. That you're in that person's head, and in a way that is quite lovely. And the combination of those two things, like very dreamlike and very, very fun. Definitely recommend seeing it. If you can see it in the cinema, it'd be great. It's at Picture House, Cameo, but which is Picture House, on Thursday. And it will be coming back online though in a couple of weeks as well. So it's really good that I do remember that I almost went to see it actually at Berlinale in 2022, because it was part of the Generation program, and I missed it. But I am really glad that it has come to the UK through this distribution company, Tape Collective. So definitely check it out if you can.
You're not here.
We're not there. The car exploded. Come get the girls. I have to stay here with Woodrow.
I'm not the chauffeur. I'm the grandfather. Where are you?
Asteroid City, Farm Route 6, mile 75.
Junior stargazers and space cadets. Each year, we celebrate Asteroid Day, commemorating September 23rd, 3007 BC, when the arid plains meteorite made Earth impact.
Holy Toledo, that's Mitch Campbell.
You're very good in the one about the tramp in the brothel who gets amnesia and becomes a pediatrician. You were very authentic.
Actually, maybe my favorite character I've ever
I don't know why nobody else liked it.
Oh.
All right. And finally, we are reviewing Wes Anderson's latest film, Asteroid City, which came out a few weeks ago, but it's still around. You know, you can still catch it at a cinema. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it for many, many years to come because it's Wes Anderson. And I've always been a big fan of Wes Anderson films. And I'm one of those people who are quite obsessed with that aesthetic and whatnot. But I'm going to hand it over to Simon to tell us about this one because you just reviewed it the other day.
Sure, yeah. I've seen it twice at this point. And I wrote a review for takeonecinema.net. It's I love it. I think it's a masterpiece. It's really one of Wes Anderson's stronger works, I think. I'll talk about the narrative a little bit, but it's a very kind of text within a text film. It's very postmodern. It's about a TV show, about a play, about some people in the desert. So the kind of the narrative of the play, which is the main narrative that the film follows, has a character called Augie Steenbeck, played by Jason Schwartzman, who is a recently widowed war photographer who is taking his family to Asteroid City for an event gathering together young junior stargazers, kids interested in science. He's recently lost his wife, and he breaks down in Asteroid City and calls his father-in-law, played by Tom Hanks, to come pick them up. The characters at the kind of space convention are subject to an alien encounter. An alien comes down and they kind of are shocked to encounter it, and the entire city is quarantined. So all these characters are put together in Asteroid City and left to interact with one another. And it's kind of through this prism that the film explores meaning and postmodernism and grief and narrative itself and kind of discovering who you are through the process of creating fiction. I think there's so much to it for such a short, tightly compacted, designed to within an inch of its life kind of film. I think it works tremendously well. But I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, so it's possible that it's working for me in ways that it's not working for, a non-Wes Anderson fan. But I'm interested in your take because you are an Anderson fan, right? And you didn't engage with it, I think, the same way.
I didn't, and I wonder if it's so. I remember watching The Life Aquatic the first time in a cinema and thinking, oh, I need to see that. There was subtlety there that perhaps even his previous films didn't have. And the more I watch a Wes Anderson film, the more, because there's so many layers and there's a subtlety in terms of dialogue or, like action that, it does make you want to watch it again because you might catch it. And I think Darjeeling Limited was one of the ones that really hit me because I didn't enjoy that film.
I was going to say Darjeeling Limited. I had the same thing. I didn't enjoy it the first time I saw it, but I've gone back to it again and again. And there's a lot more to pick up, I find, on repeated viewings.
I mean, I have some issues with that one in terms of just sort of the characters coming into, a location and sort of cultural appropriation and issues. I have some issues, but in general, I appreciated it more upon the second time. I went back because I was perhaps not in the right mood to watch Asteroid City the time that the first did. And really, I was getting this, like, whether TikTok has ruined, ruined Wes Anderson for me, and or all the SNL skits or something like that. I was just feeling like it was just so over designed, just too much, in the way that you would imagine like Disney set, and like to fall over. And that's certainly what its purpose was, but it was really driving me. And I think it might have also been the size of the screen, because it was really massive screen. It was really driving me like a little nuts, to be honest. And the lack of dialogue and kind of the sourness or the like slowness of dialogue was feeling too Wes Anderson for me, in a way that I say a lot of people have said that about French Dispatch, but I happen to be a huge, Francophile with love of like Jacques Tati. And so I catch all those references and appreciated that to sort of take and thought it was funny and amusing, where some people sort of responded differently. What I think I wanted from Asteroid City was something different than the structure that we got with French Dispatch, which was like taking a concept which was like journalism and using these references. And in this case, it was experimental theater or something like that, or it was theater, and it was really breaking the fourth wallness was really getting to me on this one, the constantly going back to the black, the different frames and whatnot. It honestly felt too much. So then I went back and saw it again, and I liked it better, but I didn't love it. And I wonder if it's my obsession is, like I get if I'm obsessed with something like French culture or French, like sort of things, I'm obsessed with the Steven Spielberg connections and stuff like that I've seen, but I'm not with the West or, and 50s sort of stuff as much as he is. Maybe that was maybe what was driving me a little, like was turning me off.
Yeah, I think it is embedded in this kind of mid-century Americana in a way that I am not. I'm sure there's lots of references in it that I don't get either, but it's for me that kind of mid-century American-ness of the whole thing merged really nicely with the kind of postmodern metatextuality of the whole piece, the play within a TV show, within a film. So for me, I tapped into those kind of postmodern sensibilities, which reminded me of David Foster Wallace, my favorite author, and really deepened the whole thing for me. I think I bounced off the French Dispatch the first time I saw it, despite loving the look of it and the aesthetic, because I couldn't connect with the themes under it, the kind of love for this early European journalism, this kind of ode to the New Yorker, which I didn't really get or tap into. But I have gone back to the French Dispatch and enjoyed it a lot more second time round. Whereas with this, I feel like I immediately keyed into the kind of frequency that it is humming at, talking about the intersection of postmodernity and meaning and creative work and artistic work, and what it means to create something, and why you can just allow yourself to be swept up in a pretty film, in a fun narrative, without searching for those kinds of deeper meanings. And in a sense, that escapism, that freedom to fall into a creative work is the meaning itself, is the emotional resonance. So I just really, I really connected with that, especially second time round. I was kind of openly weeping at the sheer power, the sheer I don't know, complexity embedded, the subtleties in the writing, in the framing, that I think are lost on some people, but that really worked for me specifically.
Yeah.
I can perfectly see why it doesn't work for people, but I don't know, it taps into something about how I think and how I approach art that I found really moving.
Well, that's it. And I was forgetting the words, but you're right. It's this postmodern sort of theater, like meta textuality stuff that I have seen in other films. And I was thinking something like, again, very different film, but like Josephine Decker's like Madeline's Madeline, which is taking a certain kind of, a lens into this world and sort of, and I enjoyed that film and I enjoyed that sort of critique on it.
Mm-hmm.
What might be happening is, again, I said blame TikTok, but I might be falling less and less. I might be falling out of love with Wes Anderson. I found that with Isle of Dogs, where I think it was like there was a bit of that SNL. This is how how this kind of film would be if it was done in this style.
Yeah,
And it's not. It doesn't. I thought French Dispatch to me at least was a new take. A new version, and I thought this kind of just went along the same lines as that one, but with a different, like you said, with different textual sort of themes underneath that I got, but maybe wasn't as much in love with. I certainly understand and have seen it and or lived it like in my own culture, but it maybe isn't my obsession. So it annoyed me a bit.
yeah. It feels like this kind of late period Anderson from I don't know, maybe Moonrise Kingdom onwards has kind of built up the style and his distinctive aesthetic more and more and more, almost as a challenge to the viewer, almost as a challenge to kind of, you need to crack through this stylistic exterior to get to the substance beneath. Whereas if you go back and watch, say, the Royal Tenenbaums, there's kind of a better or more accessible mix of the style with the substance. Here, I think he is building up the style a lot, like layers on a cake, to kind of challenge people to get through it to the substance underneath.
But also performance as well, because I feel like it's so, I mean, if you weren't really paying attention and you were just sort of half paying attention, it's quite there's not much going on. It's a bit, like it's very, I think it's very deliberately, everyone acts in a very deliberate way that
there's a coldness in how the characters act.
And that isn't necessarily the case in earlier films, to the point that it's become a style. And I mean, go with it. I'm okay with a style existing. I'm a big fan of Godard going all out, even in his very like late 60s. I mean, his last stuff, as much as I might not like it all, I applaud someone completely taking their style and doing what they want with it. So I won't, it's just that, it didn't resonate with me in the same way. And it was disappointing for me that happened. But I also then heard quite a lot of people, as yourself, say it's one of his best films. So I was trying to figure out why it is. And maybe again,
I think it is resonance. Like, you use the word resonance. I think it just happens that this film is vibrating on the same frequency as me, where it's not for you. And perhaps the French Dispatch was working on a frequency for you that it wasn't working on for me. I think it's just these films, vibrating differently.
Well, it is interesting. And I think that was why it was worth having a chat. And you'll see that this film, probably like a lot of other Wes Anderson films, if you're not a massive Wes Anderson fanatic, fan, or whatever, it could go either way. Like the people could really love it, and people, because I do know that, some people really didn't enjoy the last one that I did as well. So so it would be interesting to to continue to see how it does over time. And maybe with 2 or 3 more watches, maybe I'll get something more out of it than I didn't.
Yeah, I feel like I have enjoyed it more every time I've seen it, which is only twice, but it has risen in my kind of Wes Anderson ranking every time I've seen it. So perhaps a few more times and it'll be
It'll be my favorite.
it'll beat out Grand Budapest.
Like, yeah, well, The Life Aquatic is one of my favorites still. And again, I just, it's like now it's sort of nostalgic going back to that world. And I think it's also because it's the first time that he was using animation, and he had the funding or whatever to start building, bigger sets and bigger, like, and spending more money on design and stuff.
The
like
kind of
that.
cutaway ship in that film. It's just
and
a great
also
set.
like the little animals and stuff, they were all sort of create this animation where now, do you get to the point of French Dispatch, or in this one you have animation in as parts of the film, or you have a full animation films, obviously, like Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs. So like, that one I think really breaks into where he was building and able to finally do stuff he wanted to do with, because he had funding. But there's something really genuine about the early stuff like Rushmore or stuff like that maybe is a bit more natural, and why people really respond to that.
There is a little bit more kind of natural sincerity in Rushmore, in the Royal Tenenbaums, and even in the Darjeeling Limited, that is kind of buried under his layers of irony now.
Is Owen Wilson in anything anymore? I haven't seen him in something for a while.
No, he doesn't seem to be in as much. And I know he had a bad mental health patch a few years ago. But yeah, I haven't seen him in anything since. Well, actually, I saw him in Loki, the Marvel TV series with what's his name, Tom Hiddleston.
And I think it was Bill Murray was going to make it into this film, but got COVID. So
Bill Murray was playing the character that Steve Carell eventually played.
Oh, is that was?
Yeah. But yeah, he got COVID and couldn't film.
As my friend Emma mentioned, that the martini, the martini machine was probably my favorite bit of the set.
I love that. Yeah. This little vending machine giving out martinis next to a vending machine giving out land.
Yeah, and cigarettes and anything you need.
Anything you could imagine.
Anyway, that's Asteroid City, Wes Anderson's latest. Stay tuned for the Edinburgh International Film Festival. Well, I'm back and I'm here with Kate Taylor and Rafa Sales Ross, part of the programming team, program director Kate and programmer Rafa of Edinburgh International Film Festival this year. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
A pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And firstly, congratulations. I know it was a great deal of effort to get this particular Edinburgh International Film Festival underway in such a small amount of time. You were both part of last year's film festival, which took a turn a bit, or was a new direction for the film festival, at the very least moving it to August as well. How would you say this year you're sort of branching off to something new, or sort of taking that same sort of vision you had last year as well?
Well, I think we were really excited by what happened last year in terms of the film program. So Christy Matheson, it was her first year as artistic director, and there were a few things that seemed to open the festival up a little bit. One was a kind of recommitment to internationalism, so changing the competition from the Michael Powell Award. She had a long correspondence with Thelma Schoonmaker around it becoming the Powell and Pressburger Award, to be a mix of kind of UK and international films. And that was something, you know, we were excited by. It was also, I mean, we had a cracking opener and closer with After Sun and then After Yang, two films that kind of exemplified very, you know, very different styles, but like super cinematic. And I think the way that the program was communicated to audiences, it was, we kind of moved away from geography of, you know, here's the British, here's the American Indies, here's the rest of the world, to a more of a, here are some pleasures, the vibes, the program. So hopefully audience members can find things and hopefully take risks. So we were like, yeah, it was ace. It was like, we got the feedback we got from the audience, from the industry was like, yeah, Edinburgh's back. So we were kind of ready to, you know, to get cracking, to rock and roll on the next one. And then obviously in October, it just knocked everyone's, it just knocked everyone off course. It just, you know, it was a kind of sudden and yeah, really horrific thing to happen so suddenly. Yeah, but without going too deeply into that, it did occasion, you know, a lot of like goodwill, a lot of outpouring of you know, of heartbreak and of grief, and but also of like what the festival meant to people. And that was something, you know, we felt a responsibility as custodians of the festival to keep it going, but also we felt like kind of like that if it does go on, then you should be bold and you should continue to be bold. So last year, again, I think the program was had a lot of first and second time features. That's something that we're looking at. We're looking for new talent and really see that Edinburgh should be a place to launch new talent. It was a very sex positive program. It was a pretty hot program last year. I feel like we've upped that this year. I feel like Passages probably does, you know, brings the whole bar up quite a lot across the board. But I think, yeah, looking at the variety for audiences, I guess it's not a departure from last year, but perhaps it's a kind of building on it. But then again, of course, it's like a massively different form. So to go from, I think we were up to about 90, just under 90 features all in last year. And this year we're on 36, I think, of which 24 are like brand new features, 5 are retrospectives. And then, because we're doing this outdoor screening weekend as well, we've got like a bunch of kind of recent features as well. So it's a really, to some extent, it's like super curated, but then it's also, it's like, you can't really do a survey of the world in like 24 new features. Yeah. So it's going to be like a snapshot where we hope that we've kind of got enough variety, but also, you know, really stayed with a commitment to filmmakers who've got like a strong perspective.
You mentioned the opening films last year, and I was, I like to see that, yeah, you have sort of Scottish here and also, you know, international. What drew you to the opening and the finale films for this year?
Sure thing. Maybe I'll speak Silent Roar, and do you want to talk about Fremont?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Okay. Well, Silent Roar was obviously a film that we've been paying attention to. We've been tracking. I think a lot of people have seen and enjoyed Tumults, Johnny Barrington's previous short, although that's been quite a while. But I think the idea of a surfer movie was intriguing to us. Coming of age story, you know, that's very rich territory for a lot of first-time directors, and being shot on the Isle of Lewis. There were a few things that were immediately kind of exciting before we came to watch it. But then I think what excited us just as much as those elements was just how cinematic it is. It's a really tactile film, and the landscape is not just it's not just backdrop, and it's not just pretty. It is like under the skin. Is there something, well, not under the skin in the film, like under the skin in terms of it's it's a mood. It seeps in. I know there's something about it also, the way that the film, it does unexpected things. It has a very odd sense of humor. It's like it's irreverent about sex, it's irreverent about religion. You're not really sure where it's going. And then it's got this cosmic element. And I think that is what kind of drew us in, surfing and the cosmos. And I mean, yeah, I mean, just I can't wait to be in the audience as people kind of groove with it and hopefully vibe with it, and I get confused by it and then totally hopefully go with it. So that's what we hope from that film. It's odd, it's beautiful. Rafa, do you want to talk a bit about Fremont?
Yeah, I think Fremont is one of the films in this year's program that deals with the idea of displacement, not only geographical but cultural as well, and it does so in a way that is just so lovely and heartrending at the same time, that it approaches themes that are massive in a way that feels like it's a simple thing to do, and it very much isn't. It's a film by Babak Jalali, who was with us at EHFM in 2010 with Frontier Blues, and whose career has been just developing strongly since then, with Carolina Cavalli penning the script, and she's an incredible Italian writer who just had her first feature as well. So it's a very interesting partnership, and it is a film that we are so excited to bring to audiences because we fell in love with it immediately, and we just imagine that the same will happen with people who will be able to watch it on a big screen, and what an experience it will be. It's a beautiful black and white cinematography, gorgeous music, just a very quiet film but effective in ways that are so interesting, with incredible leading performances by first-time actor Anaita Walizada, who is just a revelation, truly. It's a beautiful, beautiful face on screen, and just a presence that feels like a star-making performance, and aided by people like Greg Turkington, who people will instantly recognize, and who's a very funny and captivating character here. And same thing for the Bear breakout, Jeremy Allen White, who has conquered the hearts of people all over the world over this past year. And I think he will very much do the same here in a lovely petting on screen. So we're very excited to have Fremont as a closing film. Is a film that, as I said, we loved, and we love being able to show it to audiences, and we cannot wait to see their reaction.
That's wonderful. So, you know, at Cinetopia, we're big fans and often screen documentaries. So I was really impressed and excited to see some of the films that you chose for this year. We were at Sheffield and saw your Fat Friend Audience Award, and I was very excited to see that Edinburgh is going to get that. Orlando, I wish I had gone to Berlinale, but Orlando was my political biography seemed like a film I really wanted to see. And my colleague Amaya said, "Is there anybody out there?" Was one of her favorite films from Sheffield as well. So what are yours? You know, can you talk a little bit about the documentaries that you chose, some of those films, and or maybe your other favorites that you're very excited to share with Edinburgh audiences that you might have seen at other festivals?
Well, I think that's great that you've seen Your Fat Friends. You're kind of you're on that team already. It's an amazing film. For it to win the audience award seems totally justified. Maybe I'll just say a quick thing on that as well. In that, for us last year, you know, Christy was really clear that, you know, premiere status isn't everything, and premiere status isn't something that actually most audiences. I think a world premiere is something really special, the first time a filmmaker shows their film, and we always want to be a place where Scottish and UK talent in particular can really have their films shine. But working with films from Sheffield last year definitely was a great thing for our audiences, and I think this year as well, both Your Fat Friends and Is There Anybody Out There will benefit from the fact that people do have that buzz around them. Orlando is actually the first film. Orlando, My Political Biography, is the first film that we invited into the program, and for us was a really key like setting of the tone for the kind of cinema we want to represent. Paul B. Preciado will be known to some people as a writer, philosopher, trans activist, and with this, his first film, he's really created something that's very witty and very, you know, very sharp, but also yeah, just really kind of accessible and sassy and fun, and it really draws you in. I found it's a very moving film in ways that I wasn't expecting. Obviously, the source material, Virginia Woolf's book, is, you know, it's all about metamorphoses, but I think in this there's something that really builds that metaphor in a really beautiful way. So yeah, so Orlando was one that jumped out. I think what else?
I think Was There Anybody Out There was another massively key title for us, because it was a film that we saw at Sundance and was such a revelation in a way that is, as with Orlando, is a first-time feature by Ella Glendinning in this case, who's a filmmaker who is so attuned to the power of the particular to become universal when done correctly, and when done in a way that is sensitive and personal and just so clever. It's a film that is beautiful, but at the same time, it is so shattering in many ways. It's a film that talks about disability in a manner that isn't pedantic or didactic, but it's a first-person tale that talks about disability within society from a very special and particular point of view. And we were just captivated by Ella on screen, by Ella the director, by the sensitivity to the way that she builds a documentary, not only formally but also in how she lets us in, and brings the idea of being seen and seeing others and understanding the dialogue that occurs when you're just in the presence of someone else and you can recognize yourself in them. So we're very excited to have Is There Anybody Out There here. It's a film that I've been telling everyone about, and I think is a beautiful communal experience and is going to bring up such interesting conversations afterwards.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in also with a film that's not strictly a documentary at all, but is very kind of research based. There's a film we're showing called Ungentle, which is it's from two artists, Hugh Lemmy, who also does a podcast and a book now, Bad Gaze, and artist filmmaker Onyeka Igwe, who's recently been at Common Guild in Glasgow. And it's a one-person kind of narrating. It's Ben Whishaw plays the kind of unnamed narrator, talking about the kind of combined history of male homosexuality and espionage in Britain in the mid 20th century. And it's this voiceover that goes over these really kind of bucolic images of these kind of seats of power, be they the kind of boarding schools, the kind of elite kind of colleges and spaces, but also the kind of cruising spots that sometimes kind of intersect with those. And that's again, it's a film that you know, it played as a exhibit in London, I think, and then we saw at Berwick. But it really, like, in terms of the kind of the new program, the new features, this is a long short at 37 minutes, but it really we felt it was as strong as any of the other kind of UK films, and we really wanted to give it that space and hopefully, you know, encourage people to see it, because I think it's really a dazzling kind of film. I guess across the board we're about half and half UK and international in terms of the new stuff, with kind of 5 Scottish films within that. I'd also just give a shout out, which is not documentaries at all, but like to the retrospectives, because you know, Edinburgh is a major part of the Edinburgh DNA, is like to do some great retrospectives. And this year we didn't really have enough run-in or research time to do something that would be a full retrospective. So to do something that was quite it was kind of in partnership partly with Cinema Rediscovered in Bristol. They were doing, I think they were screening Betty Gordon's Variety, which was so excited. It's also getting like a theatrical release through this very cool new distributors, Other Parties. And they were also doing the Wayne Wang, Life is Cheap, but Toilet Paper is Expensive. And then kind of expanding from that, we knew that Dry Long So was starting to tour, the Colleen Smith film, and Tokyo Pop came to us as quite a discovery. Yeah, I think there's something about 4 really different, unruly, exciting, formally progressive voices in American cinema of the 80s and 90s that also maybe harks back to some of the recent programming in Edinburgh. I remember coming to the season where Susan Seidelman was here and Lizzie Borden was here a few years ago, and that was so good. I felt that was really one of the stronger kind of retrospectives of recent years. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to that as well as something that's cracking.
Any other favorites for you, Rafa?
Well, I will say it's very hard to pick favorites in a year where it feels like every single one of the films that we program is a favorite. But I love to see home audiences seeing local talent on screen and to have that connectivity. So I think we were so gobsmacked by the violence and the urges and the desires and the conflicts at the heart of Kill, Roger Griffith's directorial of The Beach, who we are presenting to audiences for the first time, and we are so excited to be able to do so. So it will be lovely to see people at screenings for a conversation afterwards. Very same thing with Hope Dickinson Leach's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which tackles violence, but in a very, very different way. And it's a not necessarily rare, but a very unique experience in seeing Edinburgh on screen in a way that really showcases all the beautiful sinuous alleys of the city and all of their cinematic glory. And that brings a tale that is very heavily associated to London to what feels like a more fitting home of Edinburgh. So it's a nice opportunity to be able to revisit a classic through a new lens while also paying homage to all the beauty of Gothic cinema that we all know and love. And yeah, we have Interesting the Beats, we have Chuck Chuck Baby by Jenny Spee, such a lovely experience on a cinema as well, to be able to celebrate joy and to celebrate love and finding yourself through others and with others, to find your community while also finding your partner and your love and the things that you want from your future.
One question I had, I was going to ask about the retrospectives, but one question is, obviously the Edinburgh International Festival sort of went to help bring the festival back, but how do you see yourself embedding the program in terms of working with the festival, or are there certain things that you've brought into the program that sort of ties with the Edinburgh International Festival's sort of program itself?
Sure. Well, I mean, the way that it's worked is they stepped up in our time of need and threw a sisterly arm around us, and we're like, okay guys, don't stop, because if you stop for a year, it'll be really hard to come back. And so it's due to them that we're able to continue, them and the support of Screen Scotland. I think in terms of the program, it's been so interesting working with an organization that just has such a different time frame. So like they announced their program in March, I think, and they were like fixed in January, and we hadn't even started then. And the nimbleness that a film festival has is great in terms of I don't need to get a whole orchestra to come for every single film. So we can work close to the wire, although my God, that can be quite scary too, working so close to the wire. So yes, I think we've learned quite a lot. I hope they've learned something from us. We've definitely learned from them. But I think in terms of program, we've only got to work with very few of the partners that we would like to this year. And I think in terms of the run-in, we've done with the Cinema Under the Stars, which is the weekender at the Old College Quad, which I think is going to be quite magical, hopefully. If the weather is good. And looking at titles for that, we tried to find some crossover with the international program. So we're screening Parasite, which shares the composer Jang Jae-il with Trojan Women, which is playing as part of the International Festival. And then also Hero, which is Tan Dun is the composer, and he's the composer of the opening night celebration Buddha Passion at the Edinburgh International Festival. And yeah, I mean, Hero, I think especially it's great to see on the big screen. I think, I mean, he won the Oscar for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which Edinburgh, which we showed as on the outdoor screen last year, and I think gets a lot more attention. But Hero, the Zhang Yimou film, just rewatching it and thinking about the colors and thinking about how that's going to look outdoors, and you know, the possibility of introducing that to some young people to see some of those set pieces, the fight scenes, like particularly the stuff in the courtyard, the stuff on the lake. It's like amazing. So we're really glad to show that. And then I think once we had Hero in place, we were like, well, we've got a little bit of wuxia. Why not go for Everything Everywhere All at Once as well, which again, a lot of people have seen, but not perhaps outdoors. So it's a different context. I think we just wanted to do something that would feel special in that space and would be, you know, joyous. But, you know, obviously it's a different context to doing things at the St Andrew's Square, where everything is totally open. People can come and go, and the focus isn't really on the films, and they have to be films that people are very au fait with. Here we've got some new films. So we've got something like Scrapper, which is again one of the best debuts, but one of the best UK debuts of the year. Charlotte Reagan's film about a young girl and the kind of errant dad who comes to look after her. Yeah, so I think we just wanted just on that, like, so working with International on Hero and on Parasite, and then working with like Alchemy to screen artist films in that space. I think we were really delighted when we saw the 4 Julia Parks short films, these kind of 16mm portraits of community and activism and nature and kind of all the relationships and entanglements within them that she made while she was on residency in Hawick. And I think the idea of those films being outdoors really excited us as well. And then, you know, we've got the Lego movie and we've got Puss in Boots: The Last Wish as well. So if people, you know, people want that, we've got that too.
Yeah, well, we're big fans of outdoor cinema at Cinetopia, so
absolutely, yeah.
So we will send you the best weather vibes ever, because that does that. But it all sounds magical, and very excited about all of it. And like you said, there's so many amazing films to choose from. So we're gonna delve much more into it. And look forward to seeing the films, and then also hopefully speaking to some of the directors and other filmmakers as part of it next month. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk through the program. It really means a lot. And yeah, best of luck as you're continuing to get the festival going for next month.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
We'll see you in a month.
Yeah, see you in a month. Yeah.
Are you up to this month or coming up, Simon?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and see more of the summer films. So Barbie and Oppenheimer, obviously, gonna check those out. I feel like I might check out Indiana Jones at some point, because I actually saw them filming some scenes in Glasgow when they were here filming some of the parade scenes, I think. So I might check that out. I haven't heard great things, so I might just wait until it's on streaming. But yeah, other than that, I am continuing my project where I'm reviewing every film I see this year. That's at reviewsperminute.simonxix.com. I'm reviewing the films with a word count that matches how long the film is in minutes. So this Mission Impossible one was a long one.
You got a lot more to talk about.
A lot more words. And Shabu, which is only 76 minutes long and is a better film, I didn't get to write as much about. So it swings and roundabouts. I'm also doing a new podcast with Jim Ross of this show called the Xenopod with an X, and we're watching and analyzing all the Alien franchise films. So from Alien, a masterpiece, to Alien versus Predator, a not masterpiece, to the latest Ridley Scott ones. So I'd encourage anyone to check that out on any podcast platform they like. That's the Xenopod with an X.
And how many is it? And one episode per, and how many are there?
We're doing one episode a month. Episodes come out on the 4th Wednesday of every month. We have done Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. So the next episode that will be coming out in July is Alien Resurrection.
But how many total do you have?
Let's see, 4, 6, 7, 8. 8 in total.
Great.
Yeah, but we might do some bonus episodes around discussing the future of the franchise and stuff like that.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you everybody for listening. And we'll be back next month for a full Edinburgh International Film Festival special. So see you then.